I actually made some semi-hemispherical fret ends, and I built them out of necessity. I built them because I had designed this epoxy fretboard, and I had polished the epoxy fretboard to a crystal clear finish. And so that was prior to installing frets. So I figured if I install frets and I install them the correct way, then I'd be filing them down at the edges and scratching that pristine surface that I had made on the epoxy. So I figured, why don't I pre-polish them? And then I figured, well, why don't I just make semi-hemispherical fret ends? So this is my video for the poor man's semi-hemispherical fret ends. And what we're gonna do is just go through my made-up process, totally ad hoc. I was a little bit inspired by Chris from Highline Guitars, and really all we're doing is building a custom grinding tool. Let's get to it. So this is what it looks like right now. These semi-hemispherical fret ends are essentially pre-made, but also pre-polished prior to installing them. And that just made life super easy. Now, I wouldn't say that this is the perfect or most optimized process for semi-hemispherical fret ends. It is very ad hoc, and it was kind of the first time I ever tried it. But let's go ahead and take a look, see how I did it. So there are a few tools you're gonna need to actually do this ad hoc process. First thing you're gonna need is a rotary tool. A Dremel or some kind of Dremel-like rotary tool. I don't actually have a Dremel, I have one of these Dremel copies. This is by Wen. It does have this really cool extension, so I can actually have the actual rotary tool off over there on the bench. And this, basically I can maneuver and manipulate however I like. For this process, I did clamp this on a clamp. The next thing you're gonna need is some kind of kit that contains all the little rotary tools themselves. So this kit contains all the bits you would ever need for your rotary tool. We need two specifically for my ad hoc process. The brown ones and the green ones. The green ones are much softer, the brown ones are quite coarse. These would have worked very well as well. I landed on these particular bits. You can use any ones you like. You're also going to need some of these diamond-coated ball end rotary bits. So these diamond-coated ball ends, I believe, are 1/8 of an inch in diameter or radius. And these are what we're going to use to create and grind onto the rotary bits. Nothing special, just a round diamond-coated bit. These wear out, obviously, so you'll have to get the whole kit. Show you what we're doing here. That's all we're doing. We're just basically grinding one of these bits with one of these bits. So I got this idea from Chris from Highline. You just basically use this to grind a groove into these rotary tool bits, which will then create the semi-hemispherical ball end on our frets. But the real magic is using multiple bits. There's coarse ones and there's semi-coarse ones and there's fine ones. This green one is very soft. And what I learned was that we could actually reduce the amount of scratches we get from the coarser bits. So you want to use a variety of bits if you have a variety of bits. And I even was able to apply just a little bit of white compound in here. And that also really helped reduce the scratches. So the first step we're going to do is use the coarse one. And then we're going to use a little bit of sandpaper to reduce the scratches made from the coarse one. And then we'll use this with some compound to really take out all of the scratches. And then we'll run it on the buffer. You're also going to need some kind of buffing machine. This is simply just a cheap buffing machine that goes up to about 3,450 RPM, has a 1/2 inch arbor, and it comes with 2 wheels. I used a white compound on the left wheel. I used a liquid compound on the right. You could get away with just using the buffing wheels that came with your rotary kit. There are quite a few that came with it. I really like the results I got from my 6-inch buffer. I recommend using a drill press and the Dremel to create the groove. Here's why. I saw Chris from Highline do this just by hand, simply by taking the bit and taking the round ball end and just kind of like rolling this on the Dremel while holding this and creating the groove. So when I did this by hand, I got different depths, as you can see. And this is because I was holding this with my fingers. So I don't recommend holding this with your fingers. I recommend using a drill press to hold the bit and then use your Dremel to spin this. And they're both spinning and you can get even pressure to create your groove. So I tested this on the drill press with the Dremel and I was able to get consistent depths. The other thing to consider is not to go too deep. You only want to go the depth required to create the round groove and stop there. If you go any deeper, you'll ruin it, and you also don't want to be too shallow. So let me try to explain this as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So what I have to do is create a spreadsheet, and I measure the exact length that I need. Now, this is interesting because these semi-hemispherical fret ends actually terminate a little bit into the fretboard, and you have to account for that. So that's the measurement I'm taking. And now, here's what we need to do. I need to radius my fret wire and cut that out to the exact measurement I need. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a ball end. I'm going to test a fret wire and create both of those semi-hemispherical ball ends. And I'm going to measure again. And I'm going to see how much material I took away that I actually needed. I'm going to find the deviation. I'm going to account for that. So in my spreadsheet, I actually then measure this, add the deviation, and then I cut out all my fret wire based on that deviation. Because I know that during the process of creating these semi-hemispherical fret ends, I'm going to lose material. And I need to account for that. So you're going to have to figure out what your deviation is, because your process of grinding is going to remove a different amount of material than what I did. Everybody's process is going to be a little different. When you're actually grinding your fret on the Dremel tool, you want to find the right speed, the right RPM that suits you. When I saw Chris from Highline doing this, I could hear that his Dremel was going very high speed. You can just hear the high RPMs on his Dremel. I wanted to have a little bit more control. I used the lowest setting, and that gave me time, and it gave me control. And it was much slower, but I was choosing to have that precision and control over speed. It's just really how you want to work, your choice. All right, so I'm going to try really hard to demonstrate this. I have removed the tang on this particular example fret, and I just filed it down so it's nice and square. A little bit of a burr on there, but no, not a big deal because we're about to grind this off, but it is square. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the Dremel on at the lowest speed possible. This is what I have so far.
So far, what you just saw ground off just a tiny little bit, almost like a millimeter, but it's rounding it off. It's doing the job. You'll notice I'm going slow, so I'm taking multiple passes. I'm running the Dremel as slow as I possibly can. If you ran this higher, you could probably get through this much quicker, but I'm doing this slow. Let's do a couple more passes, okay? All right, and this is what I got from that. And you can see it's actually giving me the semi-hemispherical ball end, but it's grinding it. So these are ground frets and there's quite a bit of scratches. And you keep doing this. You just keep doing this till you get the look you want. And the other kind of technique I'm using is I'm twisting the fret wire. So I'm in here and I'm going twist, 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 twist. You don't have to, but I find that when you do this twist method, it gives you some more uniform scratch marks and they don't look as bad. It's just grinding straight. And then at the very end, I turn the whole thing around and I just get an even bottom. It gives me that sort of even bottom like that. See that sort of arc shape at the tip? And I'm getting that by going upside down like this. And that's really it. You just do that. So now what we need to do is get rid of the scratches. And we do that by using sandpaper. Let me show you. So I made some sanding sticks. They're just pieces of wood with various grits of paper. And I have really three. I have a coarse 180, and then that's a 220, and that's a 320. So all I'm doing is taking this and just going in a sort of circular motion. You know, like when you're using your file and you're kind of just going in a round motion. That's it, nothing more. And I literally spend just a couple of seconds to get rid of those scratches. And I just move up the grit, same thing with the 220 and then the 320. And believe it or not, that gets rid of all the grinding marks. So now we can move on to the green bit. So for the green bit, I do use some compound. I'll just, put the compound on there, not a big deal, just a little bit. And then we'll take the freshly sandpapered ball end and we'll run it through this. Let's give that a shot. Same low speed. Okay, and that gets rid of, hopefully, all your scratch marks. And obviously you spend as much time as you need to. This is a quick demo of how I'm doing this. You spend as much time as you need to get rid of all those scratches. Let's move over to the buffing wheel. All right, nothing fancy here. You just run it under the buffing wheel. Okay, let's take a quick look at this and see how it came out. All right, this was just a demo, and you can see how awesome this came out. And I didn't spend too much time on this, honestly. I could have spent way more time on it. And it's basically as good as the amount of time you're willing to spend on it. And I do apologize for the macro lens and the blurriness, but you get the idea, and that's really all that matters. You're getting the idea of how easy this is. That's what the bottom looks like. So I do give it that nice little arc contour on the grinder and green bit. There's the hot dog. Some people call them semi-hemispherical frets, but technically you can call them quarter spherical. I don't know. Hot dogs, whatever. Get the idea. This is just my ad hoc process. I hope that you can come up with a better one that's more efficient, more optimized. Let me know what you think.
So I'm calling this the poor man's semi-hemispherical fret end video. And that's because there's actually a tool out there. I think a maker in the UK built a disc-like tool that installs on your drill press that will actually create these fret ends for you. And it costs a little over $200, which is, I thought, was a little pricey, but it looks like a really well-made tool. And so I think that's the proper way to do it, have a proper tool. And this, making your own using these grinding bits, is kind of like the ad hoc poor man's version, because this doesn't cost really anything at all. You might already have a Dremel tool. You might already have these bits. And so this wouldn't cost you anything to try this method. This is my method, and it actually works out pretty well. You saw the result yourself. Tell me what you think. How can I improve this ad hoc process? Thanks for watching. Take it easy.